So how does the Socrates idea of judgment after death goes together with Greek and other religious ideas? Well, if you're referring to Hebrew ideas, there is absolutely nothing up to that point about afterlife. You die. There are glimpses of something when the shade of Saul is brought, shade of Samuel, pardon me, is brought by Saul, a despicable event. He uses this witch of Endor to do that. So there are some shades someplace, but no, Jews don't care. There are relatively complicated afterlife stories among the Egyptians, and Plato, of course, visited Egypt. No, he makes his stories on his own. Sort of the myths and he is a myth maker. This is a very clear thing. He doesn't want to tell you things in a direct way. He wants to tell you either a dialogue or a myth or something, and you're left there wondering which one of them are true or meant to be true, which one are just hypothetical things. Yes. So it's a hard thing. He clearly sort of in multiple places talks about transmigration of souls. So Pythagorean idea, which Pythagoreans most likely got from Indians. Does he believe it? Does he take it seriously? Again, read the texts. Again, one thing which I have to tell you, I started, as I mentioned last time, reading Plato, roughly speaking, 50 years ago. And not just Plato, but multiple commentaries on Plato. And they are helpful. Ancient commentaries by people like Proclus, Renaissance commentaries by people like Ficina, modern commentaries. All of them are helpful, but they do not explain. Plato is way too complicated. Sort of maybe in 10,000 years, there will be really good explanation of what he meant. But I doubt it. I don't think it's the issue of not enough time. He is profound and he is dark on purpose. This is the first example of what we now call esoteric writing. He doesn't want you to know. Therefore, you will not know. What is Socrates' opinion? You never know. What's Plato's opinion? Forget it. So Socrates' opinion is at least described, but it changes. So what's the relation between people's belief and Plato's stories? This is a mystery.
Historically, it seems to be that Greeks retain the same original.
No. Read Homer. What happens to everyone? The dark Hades, where there's no paradise, that everybody goes to the same thing, and they retain no memory or thinking ability. No, which is not what Plato tells you. Right? But Homer is a poet too. So reconstructing the Greek beliefs are hard. It's a very complicated civilization. Right? No. Him first. I will.
So it strikes me that both Socrates and Plato understood this very profound fact that you cannot teach understanding. You can only induce the process of thinking, and then maybe understanding will arise. And from what we know of the Socratic method, it's about asking questions to induce this process of starting to understand. And Plato seems to take it a step further and presents several differing opinions in order to make you think about them and perhaps arrive at some understanding.
Yes. The question is it so that both Socrates and Plato do not want you to know the conclusions, but want to instigate the thinking process, either through Socratic method in case of Socrates or in case of Plato through multiple methods? Yes, I would say yes, but it's complicated because, of course, we have no idea what Socrates actually did. Right? So you have to remember that what we have is Plato's description of multiple paths. And when you carefully analyze many of the dialogues, you realize that very often Socrates' questioning is nonsensical. Very often his questions are not that good. And you say, well, that's the real Socrates? No, I mean, this is what is written. So doesn't Plato see it? Yes, he does. But he wants you to study. I mean, it's complicated. Right? These are very complicated literary pieces written in very different forms. So if I started with the most poetical and beautiful or ended, that's the, I have no more time. Next week, Aristotle. There are going to be no fables, no myths, no fun. It's going to be like reading Encyclopedia Britannica, 11th edition, the good one, But great mind, but not erotic, as the true Platonist will say. So yes, it's, you have to deal with, we have these things left, and in case of Plato, as I told you, everything. We possess his entire corpus. For many 2,000 years, people were copying this stuff carefully, knowing that it's very important, even if they didn't understand. Yes, and then you.
Isn't Plato actually giving us his opinion about love by writing a dialogue about love? I mean, is there a dialogue about indifference or about hatred? He picked love, not something else. Love is important.
Well, love is clearly important. And when you study Plato time and time again, you start saying, yes, I think I see what he is saying. But then you encounter him saying, let us chase all the poets out of our city. And you say, maybe he thinks something else. Of course, then you say, well, this is an ironic. You never know. In case of Plato, the opinions vary. Right? Yes, love is very important. It is a very great thing. But it's my opinion. We do not know Plato's opinion.
But he picked this topic. He didn't pick something. He could have a dialogue about hatred or about indifference. He picked love.
He picked love, and one possible conclusion, it's really good to pick up young boys for a couple of years. Is it what he thinks? Well, I know that it's very unlikely because I know that there are passages in the Republic and in the laws which would seem to indicate totally different point of view. But it's what I'm trying to say. You're right. Of course you're right. He knew that love is important. But he's careful not to say it directly. Right? And this is what makes it so beautiful. You see? And it's it's a very confusing thing. For example, when Shelley, remember, translated it, he couldn't publish it. Not with all this reference to pederastic relationships. Picking young boys, come on, they put you in jail, even in the United States. Man-boy love association does exist, but the police does not encourage it. So, it till very recently, it was viewed as a potentially subversive text. And even now, there are multiple interpretations, some of which are on the borderline. They say, oh, well, maybe it's all right. Maybe boys indeed benefit from this relationship. Maybe we should legalize it. This is, I'm just telling you, this is how it is. He hides his opinions. There is a reason there. But it is indeed. Read it, read it. And love is important. Yes, I agree with you. But you.
So Plato mentions, sex and says it's important and beautiful. So where does this term platonic love comes from?
Where does the term platonic love come from? Clearly not from Plato. Again, this is sort of Victorian interpretation of Plato. When they published Shelley's translation, they Baudelarized it. They sort of hid certain passages. It took 80 years before the uncensored version could be published. So platonic love does not come from Plato. That it's a Victorian thing. And totally unlike anything you find in Plato. Mind it, sort of one of the lessons there is precisely that maybe you must transcend this physical attraction. Remember, I mentioned it in the last lecture, therefore I didn't talk about it in this lecture, that there is a huge event which Alcibiades describes in his speech, his attempt to seduce Socrates. And Socrates is not interested. And actually, Alcibiades says, and many other beautiful boys attempted to seduce him. And this monster rejected them. Yes? So there is something, again, sort of, if you think that what is there is a go and have sex with whomever you want, it's not what is written there. Again, read the book, do not. So, but talking about love as essential and sort of, yes, he does. So it's a complicated thing. Yes. Yeah.
Why is it, do you think, so important that the drinking party and everything is done, aside from the level that more relaxed?
Yes.
Why is it such a...
Why is the setting? Well, the setting is necessary from literal point of view because, for example, the speech of Alcibiades wouldn't be thinkable even among the Greeks unless you are totally, totally drunk. Think about it. He is a commander of Athenian army. He's going to go and conquer the world. And here he tells them about this terrible humiliation. Without being drunk, he wouldn't say that. And he sort of says that I'm drunk, I'm going to tell you the truth. Drunks do. I know it from personal experience.
So just to make the speeches more believable? Is that...
No, it's necessary. There is this artistic necessity. People are not going to say certain things unless, and it's like the other speeches, they are not yet drunk. Right? By the way, the only person who is not drunk, who cannot get drunk, is Socrates. This is the important point. He doesn't get drunk, however much he drinks. Everybody acknowledges this property. Right? So what does it mean? I don't know. I have my conjectures, but yes. You're next.
To what degree is the sort of the form of the, I want to call it a novel and it's not, but yeah.
Dialogue.
The literary form Is that in itself innovative to Plato? Does it reflect other?
There is nothing like that. It's innovative. There is nothing before. So is the form innovative? Yes, absolutely. But it's one of those things, you know, well, when Claude Debussy, French composer, was talking about Wagner, he said, we all thought it was beautiful sunrise, but it was a beautiful sunset. Meaning there is nothing like that after, and there will be nothing like that ever. This is a beautiful sunset. Like all the people attempted to write things like that. No, this is unsurpassed. This form could be imitated, was imitated, but cannot be touched. This is why, I mean, it is a consensus of the scholars over the last many hundred years that this is one of the great artistic masterpieces. There is nothing like that. It's I mean, in art, there are things which just you cannot touch. This is one.
So I was going to ask about, you talked about eros, and then there's this notion of agape and.
Yes. Yes. Of course, the question is, the Greek language has several words which describe love. Eros, which is used here exclusively, and then agape or ahape, as Greeks say nowadays, or philia, the third word. Ahape was not used for love at all till Septuagint, so was not a question. Of course, there are people who maintain that erotic love and the Christian love are totally different. A great Reformed theologian, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest 20th century theologian, Karl Barth, said, no, there is just, these are different things. But I don't believe that, and it's clearly Dante did not believe it, and the Pope Benedict XVI, if he's an authority on Christianity or not, it depends on your point of view, but in his first encyclical, which was entitled God is Love, talks about love, he does quote from Symposium. And he clearly insists that eros and agape are the same, right? At least that's what he says. So, you know, I'm telling, there are people who claim they're different. I named the people. There are people which, you know, I am among them, and not just because the Pope said so. I mean, long before he did say so, I thought that, you know, whether eros or Latin amor are central when Dante concludes his Commedia with the love which moves the sun and all the stars. He talks about amor. And yes, that's what moves all the stars. It's a complicated thing, but that's, yes. But the question at the time of Plato would not be meaningful since the word did not exist. You know, for him there was no
No, it's just a kind of a note aside. Okay, that one of the most erotic pieces in the Old Testament, which is Song of Songs. Okay, very blunt too.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
The Jewish commentators were always trying to say that it's like it describes the love of a man to God and to Torah, so, which is kind of funny to me.
It's less funny than you think. Yes.
Well, recently, I think a new form of love was love to the state or to the Communist Party, which is kind of in line with the Christian understanding that it's not an erotic one.
This is way too profound for me. The question is that there's love for the party is in line with Christian love. Okay, whatever you say. I don't understand. I cannot answer since I don't think it coheres. The question I don't think makes sense. Sorry, Michael?
The story of the people with the 8 limbs going around, the fact that it's told in a comic way, is that meant to undermine it being taken seriously, or is it a parable? What's the impact on how that's meant to be interpreted?
Okay, you do not know. This is one of the most important sort of myths in Plato. Interestingly enough, when Benedict XVI refers to symposium, that is the part he refers to, and he somehow connects it to the stories in Genesis about Adam Kadmon, the creation of man and woman together, and then the separation of Eve from Adam, the breaking the original unity. So we're dealing with profound myths. And it's up to you, again, at some point I could elaborate greater detail, but it's literally up to you to figure out what is the meaning. Plato leaves it open. If he, no, it's not, yes, it's stated by a great comedian, but it doesn't mean it's a joke. Is it the final, again, I was a little bit disappointed that when Pope Benedict referred just to this part, but not to the great speech of Diotima. In my opinion, he should have referred to both, but again, I'm not the Pope. So, there's lots of stuff there. This is deep. So yes, the answer to all your questions in terms of is it serious? Yes, it is serious. Everything in Plato, not just in this dialogue, is serious. And the dialogues have to be sort of, eventually they'll talk, it's a symphony. Different dialogue is a different instrument. If you see some of them, this is first violin, and some more less important dialogues, say, might be like a drum, less important. But you're not going to hear the full melody unless, So while I do recommend that you start with this and urge you to read it, I never said you should not aspire to read all of them. But it will take a while, and again, the warning is that this is not for faint-hearted. So if, this is not Harry Potter, right? This is not a self-help book. This does not, these are very disturbing deep texts. The only result will be the loss of peace. Or maybe some greater peace eventually, but different sort of. Yes?
What would be the reason Socrates didn't give a direct answer to a question of unification of love, generating capability and creativity on that?
You mean Diotima? Diotima does give direct answer. She talks about this eternal beauty to which love leads us. She does say that. But she says that Socrates, you're not going to understand it. She's very condescending to this stupid guy called Socrates. I'm just reporting what's in the book. But the answer is there. And some people, for example, from the point of view of Neoplatonic commentators, people like Plotinus, Proclus, Iamblichus, this is a clear indication to the one, the beautiful, the good, to God. Yes? Is it? The word is not used. It's just the beauty.
Does she give the method or the way how we reach that?
No. It's again, she sort of a little points the direction of sort of, you have to read it. In some sense, how can I put it? If you want to know what the beauty is, reading this dialogue is a very good first step because it is so very beautiful. Sort of the only way you go toward beauty is by encountering beautiful things. This is why reading this, looking at Botticelli's Birth of Venus, listening to music by Monteverdi, for example, it all leads to the same point. But there is no, if you want quick answer, there is no quick answer. You know, it's a complicated thing. It's truly complicated. It's not. It's also very, very simple, but it's so very simple that it's hard to see. Read the book. Anil has no questions. All right, thank you.